Good evening, everybody. How's it going? It's me, a comic crack. Damien is away tomorrow, and I believe Ross is away tomorrow, so there's no Sunday chat tomorrow. So I don't know. I was in the mood to chat about my week of reading tonight, so we'll just kind of get into it. Let's grab the stack here. Oh yeah. Reminding myself what I read this week. Okay. Then we'll do those and those. So starting off with Tyler Crook's The Lonesome Hunters from Dark Horse. This is a month or so old, I think. June 2022 is when this has come out. There's at least a second, if not a third issue already. I had it in my pull list at 204 for a little while now, and I just hadn't made it down to grab it. I love Tyler Crook's stuff. I think his watercolors are fantastic. This is him on everything this time, so script, art, and lettering by Tyler Crook. I loved this book. I thought it was amazing stuff. Just a kind of basic introduction to the characters. We start off kind of with our main character as a child, and it's clearly going to be about kind of demons and monsters and possession, with these animals kind of being this embodiment of demons or this evil. So once we get that introduction, we get thrown into kind of now modern times, I guess. I don't know if it says a date. No, it doesn't say a date, but I assume this is kind of today. And the art style changes a little bit, but I mean, that double page spread there is beautiful. And like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed this read. Very, very intriguing stuff. I'll be grabbing more for sure. I think Damien was reading this one too. I believe he picked up this first issue. So there we go. So that's The Lonesome Hunters, issue number 1 there from Dark Horse. One that I'll probably talk about in more detail when the final issue makes it to me in the mail. It's on its way. Should be here any day. It's a 4-issue series from Viz called They Were 11. I love this book. This is a recommendation for those of you who have been around a long time or maybe haven't been around a long time. There was another Canadian, he didn't do much YouTube, but he was around kind of in the chats and things. Johnny Zero, I did a live stream with him once or twice, I think, from Halifax, I believe. And this was a recommendation from him. Pardon me. We were reading kind of the Helix line together, DC Comics Helix stuff, the sci-fi. He had sent me some comics. I had sent him some books. Puma Blues, actually, that hardcover that I've shown before, that was from Johnny Zero. He was a great, great dude. So this is something that he had recommended. I've had these 3 issues for years, and I just kind of kept my eyes out. It's on my list on the phone. Issue number 4 of this is kind of pretty much tops of my list and top of my mind. When I'm looking through bins, I always end up looking for this one. If I'm in a place that has some kind of manga and some Viz stuff. And I've never found the 3rd issue, so I never sat and read it. But now that I know that it's on its way, I figured I'd sit and read it. So this is a shoujo manga, or girls comics are a unique comics genre. Shoujo manga are concerned less with action than human relationships. They're far more literary than most of their counterparts for males and unique in their visual grammar. So it's hardcore science fiction with a romantic twist. So we have, what years? This is 1995. Yeah, 1995 is when it's first come out. And I guess there was also an animated video as well, too, which I'll have to kind of do a dig online for. we're into the future. There's some kind of Matt Kintish looking intro here, and it's interesting, this intro, the way that it kind of plays as you read the story. There's kind of a callback to this first kind of scene. And then when I flipped back, seeing that it was like this, you couldn't really tell if there was a hint there for you. So with some manga, those of you who are familiar, there's sometimes a little bit of something at the beginning of the book, whether it's in color or something that kind of stands apart from the rest of the book. So in this case, we get this very different art style, gorgeous, gorgeous art style. I honestly, I would have been more than happy if we got this for the entire book. So it's a group of these students on a spaceship, and every once in a while, a group of 11 of them will kind of go for their final kind of test, which is going to kind of bring them to the next level of this civilization. Or sorry, 10 of them, sorry. So 10 of them get chosen randomly. In this case, when they get into this ship where they're going to be kind of locked in together for a period of time, 50, was it 50 days, 53 days, something like that. They discover eventually that there's 11 of them. Now it's supposed to be all men, and that's kind of where things get an extra layer. One of them takes off his helmet and has very feminine features. So there's playing with gender in this that I think works really well. There's even a genderless character as well. So we're dealing with beings from all different planets. So as the kind of story unfolds, you get a feel for each of these beings a little bit, and you start the story kind of opens up quite a bit by issue 3. So it almost has that Thing type of vibe where one of us is a spy, or we don't really know what this 11th person is, but we need to hunt them out. We need to kind of be careful with how we go forward in our mission here. I don't want to say too much more than that, but it was a very, very easy read, as oftentimes manga is. But this was a very kind of engaging story. So I can't wait for the final issue to get here just to see how it all wraps up. I don't know if I'll talk about it again when I'm finished it, because again, I think part of the fun of this book specifically is the way that the story unfolds. You get these nuggets throughout these issues. So I honestly, it's one of those books where I honestly don't really have an idea of how it's going to end by issue 4, which is intriguing to me. So there's the issue 3 cover. So that's they were 11. Recommended if you see it in the bins. I wouldn't hesitate, especially if you like manga already. I'll just talk about this one quick because I don't have too much to say. Heavy Metal Drummer. So this is the final issue in what I think is going to be this first arc. Chapter number 6. So I've been kind of hot and cold on this book. The first couple of issues I really enjoyed, and then it started to dip for me a little bit with the next couple. I think this one wraps up the story pretty nicely. I enjoyed it. It was a quick read. Maybe I was just in the mindset now that I sort of knew what to expect with this story. Maybe I was just more kind of accepting of what was going to happen here, but I like this quite a bit. Comics with Smurf. Hello, how are you? I like this quite a bit, and there's a teaser at the end here. Without talking too much about the story, there's a volume 2 Heavy Metal Yakuza. So I'm hopeful that this comes out sooner than later, because I enjoyed kind of how this ended. That looks intriguing to me as well too. So I will absolutely pick up the next ones when they come out. This is Behemoth, which I'm not overly familiar with. I know Chaos and Comics talked some Behemoth books in his last video. Damien has talked Behemoth in his videos as well too. So it's not a company that I see a lot of stuff out there, or at least I'm not focused on it. There's probably just the one shop in town that carries Behemoth stuff. So yeah, Heavy Metal Drummer was good. So 6 issues for that first arc, and we'll see where it goes from there. I've been catching up with All New Firefly. I only have issues 4, 5, and 6. This had started, I missed numbers 1, 2, and 3. But I sat and read these ones anyway, and really like this. Again, it's one of the things that if you're already a fan of Firefly, I think you'll get something out of this book. I've spoken about it before. I think Jared has spoken about it in his videos too. Just this kind of nostalgia for the show is what's driving me to read it, and I fully admit that. The bonus with this one is there's some pretty good art in this as well. One of the things that turns me off of some of these Firefly books, and I haven't picked some of them up, is the art that's just overly... It's just too simple, and it's just a little lifeless. It doesn't have kind of a character to it. So there's a few of the books that I've just never picked up, and I don't think I will for that reason. So it's nice that this one has something a little more to it. This is written by David M. Booher, illustrated by Vincenzo Federici, and colored by Matt Herms. The credits there. There you go. There's the credits. So if you're a fan of Firefly, I think you'll be a fan of this one. It's really enjoyable. I feel, again, like it's all about capturing those characters, and I think they do that well in this one. So this is currently coming out, I think, when did this number 6 come out here? July. So yeah, last month. So if you are curious, I'm sure you can still find those first issues and sort of catch up. I'm not sure how long this one is scheduled to run. It doesn't say, but yeah, All New Firefly. Dug into this Eros Comics collection, or a version of Mara of the Celts, and it's more of the same art. When we looked at the was it Aircell for the other Mara? I think it was Aircell that had the other ones. Same style, has kind of the adult coloring book type of vibe to it. Some of the pages, they're so kind of dense with line work, but lots of white space. I think the art is gorgeous myself. I really like it. I couldn't tell you the first thing about what the story was on this one. Yeah, even looking, I can't remember. I think this was earlier in the week. And because it's Eros, we also get some dirty pictures as well there, which ain't too half bad. Those ones I seem to remember for some strange reason. But the story I couldn't tell you anything about. So it's beautiful, beautiful stuff. That obviously answers a lot of questions you may have. If you want something that's just a visual kind of feast, give it a shot if you see it. I know that there was a collection as well too. So Aircell put out 3 issues. I think Eros just put out 1. And then was there I want to say there was like a rip-off press version as well that maybe collected some stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, it really is beautiful. Oh, I'm so bad at this. I should make sure that I give credit where. So this is created, plotted, and illustrated by Dennis Kramer, scripted by Mark Andreyko and Dennis Kramer, and then lettered by Robert Ullman. Let's get you those credits there. Hopefully that's focusing. Anyway, there you go. Check it out if you see that anywhere. I, again, wouldn't hesitate. I don't know for where everybody is watching this from. There's some comics that always seem to be in dollar bins. I'm sure we get more Aircell stuff here in Canada, seeing as they were a Canadian company. but I'm guessing also that they managed to filter their way to other places, especially within North America. So keep your eyes out for Aircel Mara. We'll talk about these ones. So one of the, and then we'll talk about some stuff that I read today, and we'll look at some stuff that I picked up today as well too. One of the comic companies that's caught my attention recently is Harrier Comics, UK company from the mid 80s. So this particular issue is from March 1987. I have the first 4 issues of this Barbarian comic. And I tell you, man, so with the Harrier stuff that I've read so far, there seems to be a pretty heavy sci-fi kind of theme to things, with a kind of wide range of artists. And I say wide range as far as like some being a little maybe more accomplished than others. The one that we looked at, Nightbird, with Cam Smith doing art. Cam Smith was then, he moved over to working with Marvel UK and doing some work with them. He has an incredibly unique style in that Nightbird. I'm pretty sure it was called Nightbird book. But this one, I think, is on a similar kind of ground as far as oddness of the art. Maybe not as much character as Cam's stuff, or at least some character in a different way. But the thing that's odd about this one is the story itself. It's not a sci-fi, but it's heavy, especially after I just finished reading issue number 2 after just before I signed on. Heavy bondage stuff in here. And in this first one, I don't know what it is sometimes about these books. There's this thing where you get kind of like the Red Room Ed Piskor type of shock value where it's very visceral, but there's something almost a little more unsettling about books like this. So our main character is sent into this castle to, has been hired to rescue this woman's husband, who's supposedly being held in the dungeons. And when she gets there, she doesn't find him in the dungeons. The only person she finds is this woman that later becomes known as Memree, Memree. She doesn't remember who she is. She doesn't remember how she got there. When we first are introduced to her here, tied up and gagged in the cellar, is when her own memories begin. So she doesn't even know how long that she's been held captive down there. So she spends most of this issue with this gag in her mouth. And it's, yeah, exactly right. It's not what I expected either, to be honest. And the further I read into it, the further I read it, rather, it just kind of became even more unsettling. So she has this odd relationship with her where she's this kind of hired, not necessarily assassin, but she's a mercenary, I guess is the best word for it. She's had a rough go of things. You can see the scars on her back there. And she kind of takes this Memree under her wing to some degree, because this Memree has formed this kind of odd bond with her. And then all of a sudden it takes a twist where she kind of goes out to see the client, I guess, to update her about not finding her husband. And instead of just kind of leaving Memree there, she decides that she's going to tie her up and leave her in the dark in the house, which is such an odd choice considering how their relationship has gone. So because of the kind of, I guess, a little bit more crude art, because of it kind of jumping out at this Harrier Comics, it really left me with a sense of what the fuck am I reading here? It was kind of unsettling, her change in tone so dramatically. And then when she comes back, she kind of sees the light and kind of befriends her again and goes all kind of soft again, I guess. So finally, we get our big final battle. We find the keys to take the gag out of her mouth. We're told that the history, if this is this woman named Memree, the history of this Memree is that she was a bit of, I don't think she could read. The story of this woman was that she was very uneducated. She couldn't read. She couldn't really speak too much. So our last kind of panel in here or one of our last panels, we get her looking like this with her tongue hanging out of her mouth and kind of a cross-eyed look on her face. That they abandoned that pretty quick, because in issue number 2, she's not like that at all. And issue number 2 kind of ramps it up a little bit too. They get into this kind of role playing. So there's this real kind of dominatrix vibe to it. And she keeps calling her mistress and master and these kind of things. And when they're going to infiltrate this other group now, that's dominated by women, that relationship is even more important. So it's a bizarre book. I don't quite know what I think of it yet. I just know that it's very strange. I don't remember how many issues it went. I want to say like 6 or 8 issues. Here's issue number 3 and issue number 4. Issue number 4 all of a sudden becomes very flimsy. It feels like it's a thinner book. The paper stock is not, or the cover stock rather, isn't as good as the first 3. But this art is incredible. These covers are outstanding, you know, for hitting that sweet spot of the stuff that I really dig about some of these companies. So a bit of a surprise one there from Harrier. But honestly, everything I've been reading from Harrier these days, I'm really enjoying. So these 3 are from, I picked up a bunch of books. There was a mini comic convention today. They had, there was a bunch of dollar bins, and then we stopped by 204 Comics because they had some new 50-cent and dollar bins. They bought a couple of collections recently, so they threw a bunch up in 50-cent bins. So I wanted to go and kind of, pardon me, flip through those as well. But from the stack that I grabbed today, I read a few of them. I got my hands on a Grendel issue number 1. I think it cost me $2 maybe. This is from volume 2 of that run, which I have a big chunk of. So now I just need number 3, and then I'll have kind of the first 14 where I can sit and kind of read them in a nice solid chunk. So I read this one tonight. I've already read issue number 2. I'm still of the same mindset after I read issue number 1. I'm not sure. Yeah, man, honestly, they're worth looking for. I don't know how easy it is to get over here. For some reason, I seem to be finding a lot of Harrier stuff here, but it makes sense because I also end up seeing a lot of quality comics and Eagle, the reprints of like Judge Dredd and related characters. So we must have gotten a huge supply of those over here at some point, and they've ended up in people's collections and in these kind of 50-cent bins and stuff, dollar bins. But anything from them is worth checking out, honestly. They have a bunch of, it looks like a few different anthologies, 2 more that I'll show here in the rest of this stack, because I found a couple of more Harrier titles. So I'm still not sure what I think about this one. Neither of these first 2 issues have really grabbed me. The Panda Brothers, it's beautiful work here. Like I said, after I read issue number 2, I was also reading that Ginger Fox 4-issue miniseries that was done by the Panda Brothers as well, but they were inking themselves. And I found that was even more energetic and wild than this. And that style of theirs kind of appealed to me a little bit more. There's nothing wrong with this. I do enjoy it. It really just screams 80s, but I'm just not 100% sure of what I think of the story so far. But whatever, considering how much these cost me, which has been a couple of dollars for, I don't know, I think I have 22 issues at this point. It's more than worth it. So that was issue number 1 that I found today. The last 2 books that I read today were enormous surprises. I always end up seeing comics from Eternity or Malibu Comics in the bins, and this one I hadn't seen before. So Eternity had a couple of different titles where it seemed to be reprints of older comics. I don't know where from or exactly when. They don't do any. Oh, I was just about to say they don't do any sort of credits, but here in this one they seem to appeared in Nightmare number 18. Doesn't say a year though as to when. So, okay, so this one they do give credits. The other couple of books that I have that are sort of these reprints, they don't give any credits. They just kind of do this masthead here, who did the cover, who the publisher and editor in chief, etc. are. But this one seems to give a little extra credits. I loved this book. I'm a big fan of werewolf movies. I always have been. I'm a big fan of exploitation and horror movies. I always have been. Big fan of European movies, especially of kind of the vampire werewolf kind of, I guess, more erotic, I guess, the erotic movies of the 60s and 70s. It has that same grittiness to this book. There's some pages where some of the panels look like they're just a extremely doctored photograph or screen capture from a VHS tape. I mean, even the Sphinx and the pyramids in the background there don't seem to blend in with the foreground, which is, I love that aesthetic. I think it's amazing. But these were ridiculously fun stories, all three or four of them, because one is I guess three of them, because one is a two-parter. Having to do with werewolves, some amazingly ridiculous dialogue, but some really, really strong images. And because that reproduction is kind of fuzzed out and just not that good, I think it adds a quality to it that you wouldn't get if it was just kind of on really nice white paper and very, very crisp. Everything that it looks like right here is what adds to the beauty of this book. So the second one, Werewolf Macabre, the first chapter is called Birth of a Beast. And the second chapter, let me just flip to it here. Second chapter is called Dragnet Werewolf. And it turns into this kind of police drama. Let me just see. I thought there was some standout images in this first story, unless I'm confusing this story and the third one, which I might be. Anyway, so more of the same. This time he is a cop, and he's actually a werewolf, and we get to hear his history, and we meet this other woman who's also a werewolf, and we get to learn her history. Like, look at these pictures, man. Look at that image of her there. It's just amazing. Really fantastic. But the dialogue and the threadbare story just become ridiculous. There are no such thing as werewolves, but we have in ourselves a man who thinks he is, and he should be most appreciative of our putting with him one of his kind. Ha ha ha. They've caught the woman and throwing him apparently in a cell with somebody that supposedly thinks they're a werewolf. So when she gets thrown in the cell, we get this. What the Nazis did not realize, of course, was that the man who thought he really was what he thought he was. And when the full moon lifted into the sky that night, the woman was alone with him in that cell. A pregnant woman alone in that same cell with a werewolf. It reads like it's pulled right out of those 70s horror movies, like the Paul Naschy world of werewolf movies. So this is such a huge hit. This was such a great surprise. I absolutely loved every single story. And this final one had some real messy, grisly stuff going on here as a werewolf attacks a guy and kind of disembowels him and tears him to shreds a bit there. And we get a little bit more on this next page right here. But because that reproduction is so rough, nothing is very clear. You don't quite know what you're looking at here to some degree. I mean, obviously you get a general sense of it, but it's amazing. There was 2 issues in this. It's 40 pages. Gorgeous to look at. The stories themselves are good enough to get you through. There's some legitimately good laughs with some of that dialogue and some of those panels. But I would highly recommend this one. It's top of my list to find this second issue. It'll be more of the same, I'm sure. So that was incredible stuff there. I'll put that over there. And finally, Russ Works, if you're out there on the replay, Russ. I don't remember if this is one that you had mentioned to me. I know recently you had mentioned a Rick McCallum book to me. I don't remember if this was the title. I haven't looked back at those comments rather, but this jumped out of the bin at me from Swing Shift Comics, Rick McCallum and Bill Anderson's Horde, which is kind of a two-person anthology. So they have a couple of stories in this. This was amazing. This has really jumped to kind of the top of my list, for Rick McCallum books. Now, this is somewhere, Russ of the future, maybe you could tell me about. There's an afterword that's written by Bill Anderson, and it gives me the impression that this Swing Shift Comics was Bill Anderson and Rick McCallum's comic company. From what I see on my comic shop, I haven't dug any deeper than that. There was only one issue of Horde, even though there was an ad for a second issue here, some promo for it. And not only that, it looks like this is the only book that Swing Shift Comics put out. So, Russ, if you have any information of that, I'd love to see that in the comments, rather. This was so good, man. So we get... There's a couple of strips that are Sander Hall funnies. So we start off the book with an intro to Sander Hall funnies. Then we get a couple of stories. And then there's a graffiti and another story called A History, and then afterward. So we get kind of 4 stories with a brief 2-page intro. And right off the hop, we're met with this gorgeous drawing. As we get kind of our first intro. And this has such a good quality to these stories. They all have this, the first 2 have this very almost absurd ending, but the rest of the story is so kind of post-apocalyptic and serious to some degree. Even though McCallum's art always gives it that little sense of something odd going on, there's always kind of a nod to, you don't know what's coming with his art, I find. I loved every single page of this. I loved the dialogue. I loved all the captions. I loved the storytelling. This first one, we have this group of guys. This one guy specifically killed this mutant girl's parents. And he's kind of the, we're going to cleanse the planet from these people. There's this kind of savior older woman who kind of steps in and basically says, you know, like, hello, Nate Pancakes. This is a comic called Horde, Rick McCallum and Bill Anderson, that I found today in the bins. It was kind of one of the first reads when I got home, as I was kind of getting the barbecue ready to go. She kind of gets in front to try to rescue this little girl, and kind of, you know, does a little bit of speeches about there's so few of us humans left. Why do you want to kill more people? And then we get stuff like this. So the rest of his gang end up turning on him and gunning him down. And she is so distraught. She has been given a grenade just in case this older woman gets overrun by these thugs. So in her grief, she pulls the pin and ends up killing herself, blowing herself up. But it just has the problem, and then we as readers get to pick what the solution is to this story, what the end of the story is. So it ends almost on this darkly comedic note. And then for the second Sander Hall funnies, we get a similar thing. This guy going into the building to kind of reach the top on his kind of quest, which doesn't go as he kind of planned. And I mean, I'd have to go back and look at my Ashley Dust comics, but this also feeds into the idea that Russ has said on previous videos, that he's not convinced that Rick isn't telling one story through all of his books. And when I see stuff like this, that really reminds me of Ashley Dust. So I wonder if that's kind of the link. This is 1989, I think. Yeah, September 1989. So it's after Ashley Dust has come out, because I think Ashley Dust was what, like 87 or something, Russ? I'm talking to you like you're here, which means that at some point we got to line up a live Russ in the comments as we kind of go. But I mean, I don't know how often I have to say it. I will say it a million times more. I fucking love Rick McCallum. I'm so glad I kind of discovered him. I'm so glad that people like Russ kind of turned me on to, hey, you should check this out and keep looking for this. And I'm so glad I was able to find a bunch of this stuff. This last one was a doozy as well, to a history. We follow this woman kind of through her life from conception all the way through to death. Wonderful, wonderful storytelling in here, man. Seeing kind of how she transforms at various moments throughout her life, and kind of how she ends up, and the kind of somber note that this story ends on. That's not the end. This is a couple of pages into the story, kind of into the meat of the story. It's amazing. I mean, I'm so disappointed that this didn't work out for them. I would love to see another 5 or 10 issues of this, just to see what other kinds of things they would come up with. We get a little kind of bio of each of them at the end here. So Bill Anderson's worked on Marvel's Longshot and Superman, DC's Batman and the Outsiders, and Justice League of America. He worked on Comico's Elementals and Maze Agency. And then, of course, then McCallum gets his credits there as well too. So yeah, it's either had I, when I first read that issue of Ashley Dust, their Comics with Smurf, it was the exact same thing that I thought too. It was even out of the black and white indie comic stuff from the 80s, his style really stands out. I don't remember how often I've seen you in the chat before Comics with Smurf, but McCallum also did a couple of issues of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles in that first volume. Was it 2 or 3 issues? I don't remember. So you can see him in there, which might be a little easier to get than some of this stuff. But this was an outstanding book. So if anybody is looking to kind of get into McCallum and kind of see what he's all about, I would strongly recommend this one. Or the Ashley Dust books, which I think is just a 4-issue miniseries. There was another appearance in another comic before that, but I would say that if you can find Horde or Ashley Dust, give them a shot. Yeah, exactly. Very busy, but not in a bad way. That's a good way to put it. It is very busy and the panels are dense, but I haven't yet found, like, there's a lot of kind of ornamentalism to his art. There's a lot of kind of ornamentalism to his art, but I don't find it takes you out of the story. If anything, I find myself getting drawn in a little more to the stories as I'm going because of that design of the page. Oops, got a hole in my lip. So for the last one, I'm just going to fire through these. This is kind of the rest of the stuff that I found in the 50-cent bins. So going back to those Harrier comics, there's something that they put out called Sentinel, which was kind of like a fake magazine newspaper of the future. So I think there was only 5 issues. I have issues 1 and 2. It looks great, but this is a good, so the Barbarian was the stuff that Harrier also did, but this kind of really showcases a different style here. And again, this is an anthology of, I think, 3 short stories or 3 stories. Some of them are based on continuing characters, but I don't exactly, I'm not as familiar with them yet to tell you exactly which ones. But some nice different styles in this one too. Very kind of almost classic looking in this one. Still with that 80s vibe in it, though. Speaking of year, so this is 1987, this book. So there we go. So that's Sentinel. Like I said, I think there was 5 or 6 issues there. This next one, it was just a one-off Conqueror special. Beautiful colors on these covers. I love the design of the Harrier stuff. It just jumps out of the bins as you're quickly flipping through 50-cent and dollar bins that are not organized and dumped with a whole bunch of stuff. This jumps out at you. Look at this page here. Some beautiful stuff in the back here. So again, another anthology. A few different stories. This one has some art and again, like some of these companies, this one has some art from somebody that I've never seen before. So they really seem to be exploring a bunch of different styles, as maybe they were trying to figure out a house style, or maybe that just wasn't even in their mind. They just wanted to get people published. So this is going to be a good one too. I'm really looking forward to reading this. So there you go. Yeah, and they're all new to me as well, Nate. Like, they're all very new to me. But Harrier, I'm really fucking honed in on Harrier as I'm flipping that logo. I'm looking for that logo, man. So another one in that, along with that Howl, there was a 4-issue, I think it was 4 issues, Edgar Allan Poe from Eternity. So I guess all stories based on, I don't know if they're loosely based or if they're direct lifts from Edgar Allan Poe stories, but this is another collection of reprints that, no, Harrier is UK. I don't know if it's reprints or where the reprints are from. Yeah, see, this one doesn't give a breakdown like the last one. So this is 1989. Oh no, I'm lying to you again. It does give a breakdown there. So it does give a breakdown of who the art is by, but unfortunately it doesn't really tell you the years that this stuff was from. But again, if this is anything like Howl, I'm looking forward to it. These kind of poorly reprinted comics. Like, look at this stuff. It looks very promising. I don't think this is going to be a loser of a book. I think this will be another winner. So we'll see. I'll report back. For a measly $5, I found a copy of the first printing of Freak Brothers issue number 5. I think I have 4 different printings of this now, but I was shocked to find this in such great condition for $5. Leads me to believe that potentially they didn't know what they had. There's not a huge, amongst kind of the comic guys that I know in town, there's not a big underground comics fan base. I may be one of the only ones, not that I'm the only one, but there isn't many of us. So I think there's that part of it too, where they know that they're not going to sell this to anybody. So maybe the look, the thought and the looking into these books is not forefront on their minds. Freak Brothers is a classic. I mean, it's one of my, if not my first underground comics. When we went to visit my family in the UK, in England, because I still have the books that I bought on that trip because they have the UK price variants on them. That's where I first started picking up Freak Brothers, and loved it ever since. And I mean, I've still got all my issues. There's no way this stuff is leaving my collection. They're great to flip through. Roots of the Swamp Thing, issue number 2. This was the last one I needed from this 5-part reprint series of older Swamp Thing. And that's why I got it. It was just to kind of read these stories. The reproduction isn't the greatest. It's that they've obviously recolored it, which is drives me a little bonkers because I just kind of think this one doesn't look as bad as some of the other ones. Let me just say that. Pardon me. But it's great to have these books in this format. So I'm very excited that I found this. It was another great surprise. They had in the dollar bins at the convention, there was multiple copies of the other issues in this, but this number 2 seems to be the one that's difficult to find because this was the only copy he had in the bins. So glad to finish off that run. A couple of issues of Unexpected. I'm a big fan of this. This kind of goes back to my childhood as well too. I had a couple of Unexpected later, you know, like 180s, 190s, somewhere around there, maybe even into the 200s. There was one specifically with a Minotaur with boxing gloves on in a boxing ring. I think that was one that I had when I was a kid that I read over and over and over. So I'm slowly chipping it away at this one. I've got most of the later stuff anyway. Obviously the early stuff is very difficult and expensive to find. Fish and Chicken. I think Colin Blanchette, Loading the Cannon, had mentioned this at one point. It's Fantagraphics books. It was cheap. I got it. A couple of issues to fill in some House of Yang and Yang. I haven't read very much of this stuff. I'm kind of waiting to pick up a whole chunk of it because there wasn't that much of this out there. So I am kind of waiting till at least I get all of this one volume so I can read the whole thing back to back. So that's always nice to find some of those. Another Eternity / Malibu. This is Dracula number 1, based on the classic novel of horror by Bram Stoker. I'm not the biggest Dracula fan in the world, but again, I do kind of get a kick out of these Eternity books, so I figured I'd give it a shot. Instead of doing a variant, just put the Virgin on the back of the cover. That's a great idea. It could be Freezing Up. Yeah, it very well could be me there, Nate. The family is up and maybe still on their devices, so hogging some of the internet signal. If it gets really bad, yeah, if it gets, it's not just you. Okay, so if it gets really bad, just let me know, and then I can kind of cut this because there's no point in kind of going further if you can't see or hear me. I don't know this one. Special Studio, The Snake, issue number 1. Loved the cover. I don't know if I loved the interiors, but I sure as hell didn't hate them. So now it was cheap, so it came home. I'll report back and we'll see how that is once I get to it. Surprised to find an issue of Kyra. I have 2 of these now. This is obviously drawn by people who have a fetish for muscular women, because we always get a pinup on the back cover as well too. Look at the legs on this babe. So it's odd looking stuff. I kind of dig the style though. Like I kind of like the way that looks. It almost has that kind of Sam Keith-ish feel, you know, with his very fleshy women, I guess. But these women are not fleshy in that way. These women will kick the shit out of you and fuck you in the ass. So a whole bunch of Gun Fury. Very excited about that. I only have the 1 issue, so I even got the very first one now too. So now I can sit and read 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7. So yeah, I'm very excited about that. Some Dave Cooper goodness there. I finished off my Fusion run from Eclipse. It only went 17 issues, so I found from number 11 to issue number 17. I don't think I had read any of these yet. So this one might be the next one that I dig into. So that's cool. It's always great to kind of tick some more boxes on the Eclipse Comics collection there. So that was a nice score. This one looked incredible. Tigress from Heroic Publications. This is issue number 6 of Tigress. I want to say it went like 8 issues or something like that. The cover was intriguing, but the interiors really caught my attention. I really like the way. Yeah, I feel the same way too. I think I've probably talked about this before. I feel like in the lineage of underground comics turning into indie comics, and when we get into creator owned, I think Eclipse Comics plays a very, very, and other comic publishers as well, but I would argue that Eclipse Comics plays a pretty big fucking part in that, because they just had so many different titles that they were putting out, and they were starting to branch off into different areas, doing the trading cards, and they did the Timothy Truman record that Colin showed off in a video when we hung out. But yeah, so Tigress, I'm looking forward to that one. If anybody knows anything about this, please let me know. So this is Ace Comics Presents The Golden Age of Klaus Nordling. There was a few, 4 or 5 in this, The Golden Age of, from Ace Comics, all focusing on someone different. The cover caught my attention. The interiors looked pretty great, kind of like a little more classic cartooning. Looks like some gag type strips. So I'm looking forward to that. So that's that one. I can't fucking believe I found another issue. I found one issue of this a little while ago, and I thought I would just never see it again. Rat Bastard by Crucial Comics. This is issue number 1 of 4. Yeah, I saw a bunch of those today, actually. The Adventure Publishing. Yeah, Adventure Publishing had some good stuff too. I think they did Keith Yama. No, not Keith Yama. What the fuck? Oh, it's on the tip of my tongue, man. Anyway, I do have a couple of things. They did Harry Harrison's Death World as well too, was one of them. I've got those. But there was another one, Reet something or other. Completely drawn a fucking blank. This other issue of Rat Bastard that I had was pretty fun. It was poking up out of the bin. Yeah, that's the one. Loading the cannon. That's the one. Retief, or however you pronounce it. That's exactly it. The other one was good enough, but this was 50 cents. So why not give it a shot? And then again, in the Eternity, this is Ghosts of Dracula. What is it? Issue number 3? Issue number 4. This was, I think, a 6 issue. Martin Powell script. Seppo Makinen art. It's funny, for a guy that doesn't like vampires particularly that much, I seem to pick up a lot of these. There's a million goddamn vampire comics out there. And second to last, Fat Freddy's Cat, issue number 1. This is like the 4th printing or whatever it is. It also, when it was first coming out, it was in this kind of like smaller, almost ash can type of edition. But this is always great to have. This was a couple of $1 or $2 or something like that in one of the bins. But these are really, really funny. I love the Fat Freddy's Cat strips. They become almost like a weekly gag strip. And then the only new thing that I bought from 204, I'd read the first issue of it, and I found it unreal and very, very intriguing. So the collection of the book The Rush by Cy Spurrier. Is that Godin or Cotton? Let me get the credits proper. Like Nathan Cotton, I think is what that says. Addison Duke on colors, and then Hassan Otsamani Elahu. Apologies for butchering that lettering. The first issue was great. I loved the, yeah, Death World is good. Um, Harry Harrison's stuff is pretty great, honestly. I mean, I'm a huge fan of um, the Rat, whatever, the Stainless Steel Rat. Um, so this first issue was fantastic, and I just for some reason never kept up with them coming out. The art is beautiful here, and I'm really looking forward to seeing where this goes. A lot of weird kind of creatures that are half human, half spider. I don't even know what the hell is going on. So yeah, that looks pretty great. The Rush. That's it. Thanks very much for hanging out, people. I didn't think this was going to be that long, actually, but I guess there you go. It is what it is. So we'll probably see you next week, and I'm hoping that I got word that the comics that I sent into my comic shop got there. I was doing a trade with them. I'm very curious how that process is going to go. So hopefully we can talk about that in a couple of weeks too, as that comes to an end. It says it's going to take them about a week to kind of go through the box of comics just to give me my final credit value. So I mean, fingers crossed that I get maximum bucks in trade with them. And we'll see if it's worthwhile. But so far, the process itself was incredibly easy. They lay things out very, very nicely on their website, even for a Canadian. The only thing that made me a little nervous is they do give you a window that the package has to get there in a certain time. Mine got there the exact day of the cutoff. So that's the gamble for me living up in Canada, making sure that it's packed properly and that it makes it there within that time frame. So that caused me a bit of anxiety because they say on their site if it comes anytime after that cutoff date, they may not want them, et cetera, et cetera. There's all these kind of small print written down there about if you don't make it within the timeline. So that would be the only thing that gives me a bit of anxiety, that maybe next time I would spend a couple extra dollars to kind of have it get there even faster. So we'll see. We'll see how things go. You sold and traded with them before, always a good experience. Well, that's good to know. And again, I think that at this point, they're a pretty well-established company. I'm not worried that they're going to take advantage of me or anything. I just want to make sure that I get the maximum amount. I had a package late because of COVID shipping issues, and they were cool about it. Okay, that's good. But normally I get that stuff right out. Yeah, and I think that's what the delay on my side was too. We're having a lot of mailing issues within Canada. Never mind sending stuff to the States. So I know that there's a delay on mail right now as well. So okay, everybody. Thanks very much. Thanks, Nate. It was good to see you. Loading the cannon. Thanks for coming. And then Comics with Smurf. Nice to see you. Thanks very much for hanging out with us. Yeah, I used they have an option if you don't really know how to grade, choose the green option. I just did that for all of them. I figured I wouldn't kind of mess with that. They're going to know way more than I will about that. So I'll just kind of do the standard across the board, and they can have a look and tell me if it's over under. I have a feeling some of them are going to be under what I kind of put in, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. Maybe I'll get lucky. Maybe something was a 9.8 of an old Aircel porno comic that they really want, and they'll give me 95 cents instead of 75. All right, everybody. Thanks very much. We'll talk to you.